Today on Backstage Agents, we have Mariah Phillips, who is a financial advisor with Northwestern Mutual. She gives all sorts of great advice on how to start investing money, what the pillars of getting your financial future started are, and just has some great stories about a journey from Starbucks to what led her to financial advising. This is a lot of really great information in this one, and we're excited to share it with you. Mariah, welcome to Backstage Agents. Thank you for being here, and during the holiday season especially, so appreciate that. So tell us how you got to Nashville and what brought you here in the first place.
Absolutely. Well, like most people, I think music brought me here. So I actually originally am from California. My husband and I met in high school, and we're in competing bands.
Nice. Shout out to Derek.
Derek Phillips. So he stayed in the industry, and I did not move on, but spent several years supporting his early endeavors.
Nice.
But we left California back in 1999 and moved to New Jersey, where he played jazz in New York City for several years. And after doing that and doing the struggling New York musician life for several years, he had an opportunity to do a recording down here in Nashville. Mm-hmm. And so we all came down because why not? We'll go sit in Nashville for a little while, and really loved it. And we decided that we were going to move. So we moved here in 2006. And so I'm not a native, but I have lived here longer than I've lived anywhere else in my life.
Nice.
So, Nice.
So when you were in a band in California, were you the front person of that band?
No, I was just in band in high school. I was nothing fancy.
Gotcha.
No, I played trombone, actually, which did you?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, you know what? I get that vibe from you. I'm a trombonist myself. Well, I would say I give off that vibe. Yeah. I get off that vibe too. I give off a trombone vibe for sure.
I learned something new about Dan today because I did not know he played trombone.
I didn't do it long. Middle school.
Middle school, high school. Instrument. You know what? I don't like to think about that part of it, but the spit, But you know what? I did that for through high school, and then I quit because I was not going to continue to spit in my instrument.
Where are you going to do that?
I actually do have a friend who was in band with me. Who she has moved on to become a professional trombonist in New York City, and so there aren't many female trombonists.
No, I know.
Out there.
Be sure to say ists. Yeah. Talk to about a professional trombonist.
Yeah, I know Tedeschi Trucks has a female trombonist, but
truckist.
Don't see too many of them.
No, but she's incredible.
Yeah,
Jennifer Wharton, shout out to her too.
It's a bass clef instrument.
It is. I spent a lot of time actually in high school and college. Bass players will read a lot of trombone literature because the instrument is similar. A lot of the exercises, the way they translate to the fingerboard, it makes them good exercises
I actually
for bass
did
guitar
take up bass guitar for a little while. Loved playing the upright. But my fingers, it just hurt my fingers, and I was like, not worth it.
It does, I'm not playing as much these days, so every time I get called for a gig, I'm in the midst of this right now because I got one on Monday, and it takes a while for my calluses to get back into shape, and you get in the blisters again, and as opposed to when I was playing all the time, it's like never happened. But it's hard on the hands.
Yeah,
so
it is.
It's a very especially upright, super physical instrument.
Yeah.
So
you have to be able to read bass clef to be on this podcast.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it. This is a bass. Absolutely. It's all about the bass. No trouble. There you go.
We love it. Awesome. So you come to Nashville. What were you doing during this time when Derek was playing?
Making money, supporting our family. I actually was a store manager for Starbucks.
Okay, cool.
And I started doing that. We moved to New Jersey way back, and I went into management there for a long time. Great benefits, honestly, for we had a bunch of kids. We now have 5, but at that time when we moved there, we had 2. And so needed health insurance because he was a musician. So so I provided the health insurance for the family, the steady income for the family, and he provided the fun.
Yeah.
So we did that. And when we moved to Tennessee, that's what I was still doing.
Okay.
Not long after we got here, I actually went to finish my college degree, which I had given up to move to pursue his dream. And so I finished my degree at MTSU in political science and ended up teaching high school for several years. Taught U.S. government and personal finance, which kind of like full circle leads me to what I'm doing now as a financial advisor. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And I remember, especially back in the early 2000s when I was a kid, Starbucks was like, everybody loved working there at that time.
Yeah.
Like, it seemed like a great company. Benefits for if you were even just part-time, not full-time, and I bet the culture has changed a lot since then.
Culture has changed a lot. The bigger a company gets, the harder it is to maintain its core.
Yeah.
And so I still think it has some great benefits, and I feel, from a corporate work culture, pros and cons for sure, but it definitely has lost some of its community-based kind of connections that it really started with. So
yeah, because I remember that, because that was really like the first coffee shop when I was growing up, and in junior high and high school, that's where we'd all go, Starbucks to hang out before like the mom and pop coffee
really
shop.
Blew up,
it really blew up. It was just starting. I mean, you basically drank Folgers before Starbucks was a thing in the U.S., and then they kind of blew coffee up in the U.S. So
and they give you £1 a week, right?
A pound of coffee a week.
Per
I will
person.
say that's actually still the thing that I miss the most after leaving there is the free pound of coffee a week.
I used to play in Naples. I played 3 different Starbucks. I got out of college. I decided to, or I was a business guy, so I just treated it like as such. And I had a contract to play as a coffee shop person at Starbucks, but I get everybody's pound of coffee. Yeah. So it was like I had 16 pounds of coffee a week.
Yeah.
A whole freezer and good.
Yeah.
Good coffee.
Freshly ground. So I love Starbucks.
Yeah.
Lots of reasons.
That's awesome. So how long were you doing teaching in Tennessee?
So I taught for 7 years.
Okay.
And I actually only left teaching because I ended up deciding to run for political office. And so
that was Congress, correct?
I ran for U.S. Congress in 2018. Yeah.
Nice.
So
I remember that.
Yeah. So I left the classroom. I was a U.S. government and personal finance teacher. So I left the classroom to kind of put my U.S. government teacher hat on in the community.
Yeah. And
so ran for U.S. Congress, unfortunately unsuccessfully. But it was an incredible experience, and I did that for full-time, more than full-time. It's more than a full-time job to run for office. And so I did that in 2017, 2018. That's what led me to leave teaching.
Okay, nice.
And so after that election and, kind of thinking about what I wanted to do, because I needed to go back to making money again, I thought about going back into the classroom. Thought about, moving into a couple of different fields, and an opportunity to become a financial advisor came up. My personal financial advisor actually contacted me, and he said, "Hey, Mariah," he goes, "you know everybody after your run for office. We're recruiting some people into this industry. We need somebody who's a motivated self-starter, has a heart of a teacher, and cares about helping people. If you know anybody like that, send them my way." And I was like, I'm that person. He had no idea I was looking for a job at the time.
Yeah.
And so I was able to take my U.S. government teacher hat off and put my personal finance teacher hat on and start working in that role as an advisor.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you jumped into that world. When did you jump into that world?
So 2021 is when I fully full-time committed to it.
Nice. That's awesome. So getting started in that world, you sound like you have a bunch of experience from several different fields of being a store manager and then working in a classroom with kids, which I'm sure is entirely different to running a political campaign. How did all of those skills help you get started in the world of financial advising, which very much like what we do, you're self-starting, you're finding your own clients to invest their money for
Let me add the other element of also being married to a musician, because that is a part of the how it all works together.
Yeah.
So, of course, working, having that vast array of experiences allows me to understand how different people get paid, what benefits are available in different types of industries. It really gives me a lot of awareness on what's out there, what's available. So when I'm talking to clients, and they say that they are a teacher or they work for the government, I already know how those benefits packages work because I've lived them.
Yeah.
Right? If they come from a corporate background, I already know what most corporations offer and how to find the right information because I worked in that background. And if they're a musician, which I do end up working with a lot of I call them creative entrepreneurs, musicians, photographers, influencers, in that space, I know how that works too because I've been married to it for, over 25 years, right? So I know how the ebbs and flows of the payroll comes. I know, I say payroll, that's a joke. How the income comes. I know the different revenue streams come in because I have lived it. I know, what somebody's just starting out, some of their challenges might be versus somebody who's successful and, what some of their challenges might be. So I've lived it. So even when I ran my campaign, that was a startup self-managed business, so that was my first entrepreneurship experience where I had to hire and train a team. I had to build staff. I had to set the direction and the vision for what I wanted. I did that in my political campaign. So rolling that over into a financial advising practice, it's the same skills. And so my years as a U.S. government and personal finance teacher, actually, my personal finance teaching experience was really foundational for me to learn how to break down really complex concepts into easy to understand pieces. And I don't know how y'all feel about money, but besides that, most of us work with people around their money, right? If you're in mortgages, you understand, people don't know.
No.
Even what they don't know,
Yep.
right? And so it's my job to be able to explain to them what's available, what their options are, and to be able to break it down in a way that's not intimidating and is comfortable and, to their knowledge level. And so I learned how to do that in teaching.
Yeah, it's an important skill because I run into that a lot in mortgage world where it's a complex financial transaction. You have a lot going on. There's a lot that the real estate agent is handling with the house in terms of walking them through, is this a good house that you want to buy? Is this going to be the right move for you and your family? And then there's my side of it of, can you afford this? Does it make sense on the financial side of things? And then breaking down all the particulars, even something as simple as different between your interest rate and your annual percentage rate.
Absolutely.
And it's amazing how many people don't even understand the difference between those two. So,
well, I think one thing about that is, I have a lot of clients that have a desire to purchase a home, right? And so we have those conversations because when we're doing a goal setting, I need to know what they're saving for, what the purpose of this money is, so I even know where to put it, right? And so when I'm looking at somebody that wants to buy a house, it's not just how much money can they save, but I need to talk to them. I'm not a CPA, but I need to talk to them about how they are managing their taxes. Because if you're working with musicians, you know this, a lot of CPAs are doing their best job to try to help people save as much money as possible on their taxes. And as an entrepreneur, one of the benefits of being an entrepreneur is that you can write off so much of your life, right?
Basically
every cup
everything.
Of coffee that you have, every piece of clothing, every haircut you ever get, you buy toothpaste that has whitener in it, you can count it as a a business expense, right? Because it's show business.
Starbucks.
But the problem is if you write every single cup of coffee off that you ever have, I have clients that come into me and say, I make $200,000 a year. And I'm like, cool, let's start planning with that. And then I say, give me your tax returns. And on their tax returns, they're showing a $30,000, income.
Yeah.
And I'm like, according to the world, You are not making $200,000. So let's break that down. And so, I know with mortgages, because I have a client going through this right now, whose income was, variable income, not as good as it needed to be, as it had been. And, they're working through a mortgage situation where they're looking at bank statements and doing bank statement loans and things like that. There's flexibility that can happen, but most people don't know that if they don't record their income on their taxes, then that income doesn't exist. And it's not just buying a house, it's getting other, debt instruments if they're getting a car loan or anything like that. Business insurance.
Small business loan.
Absolutely. And Social Security when they retire. And I'm thinking long term, if you're making $30,000 a year, your entire career, what's that Social Security check going to look like when you retire?
Great.
Not great. That's right. So those are the conversations that I kind of help my clients.
That's awesome, because I feel like a lot of clients come to me and I'm the first person that they have talked to about this, and a lot of my friends who play music, they'll jokingly refer to me as the dream killer because all these people come and talk to me, and then I take a look at their taxes.
The X's.
But all of the above. And they'll come and talk to me, and I'll take a 2-second glance at their tax return and be like, we're gonna have to do some work on this. And thankfully I know some tricks around what to do where you can still reduce your tax burden, but it's going to show up as income, things like depreciation and writing your miles off and claiming your home for part of your business use, even if you're renting, if you have a CPA who will play ball with that.
Contributing to a SEP and, from a retirement account.
All of that stuff. So, and it depends, like this time of the year is a super good time of the year for me to catch people, because I can kind of walk them through, this is kind of what you want to be doing. This is what you were doing. You're going to have to pay more in taxes this year, but here are some things where we can still show income for you, but it's still going to reduce your tax burden. It's not going to be zero, but it is going to be less than if you just claim $150,000 in income, and just walking people through that. So it's super nice that you are focused on that and dive into that with clients, because I feel like a lot of financial advisors, it's just like, okay, you have this money, and what are we doing with it? So that's awesome. So it seems like you have a super relational approach to clients. Where does that come from?
I think just my heart to actually help people. I don't take minimums. A lot of financial advisors also have, like, if you don't have $250,000 to invest, don't knock on my door. And while I think that that's a really great thing for people that have those assets, and the people working with them, I recognize, because of my background, that not everybody's going to come to the table with $250,000. People would like to be able to have $250,000, and they're trying to figure out how to get there. Right. And so, I think my education, in terms of my years as a teacher, and just, I just truly care about helping people. And so, when somebody comes to me, I look at everything that they're presenting to me, and I try to figure out what's the best solution for this person right now. And in some cases, it's, they really need to focus on paying down debt. But sometimes people come to me with debt as their biggest concern, but that's actually not, the most important thing. They're kind of freaked out because they have some debt.
There's good debt and bad debt.
There's but they don't have a savings account, or they don't have, any insurance or whatever. I try to make sure that what they bring to me, I allow that to inform, what recommendations I make for them. And that requires me to listen and listen deeper than just with the numbers on the paper.
The same thing in mortgage. I feel like there's a lot of people where it's just the transaction side of things, which that works for a lot of people, but I've never been that way. I kind of like looking at the whole picture and helping people through that process and explaining how it can help them in their bigger financial picture,
Yeah.
and then hand them off to a financial advisor and to pick up the ball from, you have the house now go and talk to somebody about what else to be doing with your money and where to be investing it.
Yeah.
So
I think, you are called the dream killer, but I think in some ways I'm like the dream caster, right?
Yeah.
Because I sit down and like, because a lot of times I will get people who have houses and things like that, and that's always great. That's easier because that's one, check, got that taken care of. But a lot of times people are coming to me like they want to buy a house. They want to, think about retirement one day. They want to be able to, get, build a studio out and whatever, so I get to be on that end of it, where I get to help them actually like dream, help them dream about what is important to them, and help them build a plan to reach those dreams. So
that's awesome. So what are a couple of things for like the creative entrepreneurial, as you called it, your favorite things that regardless of how much money you're making or at what spot you are in your business, what are like the first things that you think are a good recommendation for everybody to be doing?
Absolutely. So there's basically like 4 foundational pieces that unless you have these things in place, other chips are just going to fall. One of those is having an emergency fund, and how much of an emergency fund you need is based on your cash flow and your expenses. For some people, it may not be very much, but for some people, maybe, if you're making good money, your cash flow needs are probably a little heavier. If you have variable income, which most creative entrepreneurs do, you probably need to make sure you have more reserves, because if you have a slow month or 2 or 6, or
years,
or you get sick or injured. I mean, forget it. Like you can't, nobody's going to pay you just because they feel bad for you, right?
They are not.
No, so if you can't make the gig. It sucks. Hate it for you, but now we got to hire somebody else.
You eat what you kill in that world.
That's right. So making sure you have the right amount of emergency fund is crucial. I make sure my clients are working on that even before they're paying off their debt. Because if they don't have enough in emergency fund, what happens when they have a blowout on their car? They put it back on a credit card, So emergency fund's number 1. Debt repayment is also a key part of that foundational plan. Making sure that they understand good debt versus bad debt. What they need to pay off, how quickly they need to pay it off. If it's bad debt, we want to eliminate it. If it's a car note at 5% interest, we can make decisions at that point. But bad debt we want to get rid of for sure. Making sure that they have the right amount of life insurance, and that's going to be different for everyone. I will say, like I have a client who I just started working with about a year ago who passed away. She's a musician, fell asleep driving home from a gig and passed away a couple weeks ago. And we had put some things in place. And so her family is okay. We didn't anticipate that, she would pass, but she did. And because we had that life insurance in place, her family's taken care of. So that's another component. And then if eligible, having some kind of income replacement available, which would be like disability insurance. It's hard for musicians to get that. It's easier for some other creatives to get that. But there are ways to make sure that if you do get sick or injured, that you're covered financially and you can still earn some money through other means.
So
that's
awesome.
Foundationally, those are like before we started, investing for retirement. Because frankly, what happens if they have, they get sick? They're pulling their retirement investments out. Now they're paying penalties. Now they're paying, right? So we have to have those four things in place in order to even start the process of building wealth.
Gotcha. So I really like those foundational pillars that you have there. I've never had it explained in that way, it makes me think that I got to check on some insurance things for myself, because
Let me know.
it's not necessarily something that I have in place. Once you kind of have those pillars, good insurance in place, emergency fund, debt paid down, etc., where do you recommend starting to build from there, especially for the creative entrepreneurs who aren't getting a 401k or don't have any of those employee provided benefits?
Well, I think it goes back to knowing what their goals are, right? How much are they spending on gear and things like that, right? Because that's outside of the emergency fund. Do they need for the structure of their business, do they need a business savings as well? Because if they're getting ready to go on tour, we don't need to be locking up a lot of their money in their extra money in retirement accounts. Now, if they are, studio musicians and they have, they're working enough that they're getting their normal bills paid and they have their emergency fund, let's make sure we're locking some of that into a retirement account. Income levels will determine if they can contribute to a Roth, which is a great place to start. Or if they don't qualify and have to do just a traditional IRA. But there are some options there that are tax advantage options. So it really goes back to what it is that we're building towards to determine where the best place to put their money is. Investing is always fantastic. The longer you're invested, the better the return on your investment. So the younger you can start your retirement planning, the better. But if you lock everything away in retirement, then you don't have enough to buy a house, right? If you lock everything up in retirement, then if you need something more than that emergency fund, you got to pull that retirement out. And so I like to make sure that we have kind of midterm plan and a long-term plan when it comes to where to allocate their money.
Yeah. And it's funny, I'm one of those mortgage lenders. A lot of people in the space are very aggressive just about buying as many properties as possible and getting into the cash flow and rental thing.
Yes.
And I think that's great, but I'm kind of one of those guys, I'm like, you should be doing both. And I think a lot of people in the real estate world especially, they're all in on real estate, which, again, I think it's a great tool to build wealth, but I think especially in the social media age, I think it's oversold as a passive investment, where it's like the stock market is truly a passive investment. Like, nobody's calling you at 3 a.m. because something went wrong with your property.
Yeah.
It's, real estate's a great investment, but I hesitate to call it passive.
Yeah, that's a good point. But it also is, it's going to go up and down just like the stock market does, right? So it's not guaranteed income. So right now, in December of 2024, whenever you're listening to this podcast, in December of 2024, the market actually is pretty good in Nashville right now in terms of the housing prices are dropping. So for a buyer, it's a pretty good time to buy, even though interest rates are still higher than we'd like them to be. Housing prices are dropping. And so you can actually find property in East Nashville right now that's in livable condition for under $500,000.
Yeah, which is wild. You couldn't do that in 2020.
No.
In 2021.
Right. So if you are a real estate investor, right, that property you bought in 2021 might not even be worth what it was 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Right now. Now it will continue to reverse itself, and real estate in general will go up again. But just like any investment, you're going to see those ebbs and flows. And so if all of your money is tied in one product, and that's real estate, or one product, and that's retirement account, or an investment account, then you're not going to have as good of a return as you will if you have some in multiple different buckets.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of having different buckets, and what I'm seeing right now is a ton of Airbnbs go up on market right now, because we've had guys on here who are very good at the Airbnb game, but it's another one of those things that I think in the pandemic, when rates were low and you could get property very cheap, everybody was like, oh, this is a great way to make extra money. And then Nashville is one of the unique cities right now where we don't necessarily have an inventory issue. We have an affordability issue. And then there's so much building because of what Nashville has become in terms of hotels, and everybody has an Airbnb, that all of a sudden this thing that a lot of people thought was going to be easy money turned into something that was work and incredibly competitive.
Yeah. Well, also, what I've seen a lot, and you probably have seen this as well, and your real estate background, I'm sure I've seen this, people leveraging the equity in their existing home to purchase another home. Yeah. And then they're stuck now, they're stuck with the mortgage on 2 or 3 or 4 properties. And then they have,
HELOCs is generally what people are using.
On 2 or 3 of those properties. Yep. And so their debt ratio is huge, and they don't have any liquidity, which is what real estate is supposed to do, right? Yep. And so if you buy a house that, and you put a good down payment down, and you have some quick equity in that home, the beauty of that is you can leverage that for the future. But if you're just turning that around and purchasing something else, you now have lost the equity in that original home. And I actually, because of my specialty in variable incomes, I do work with a lot of real estate agents as well. And so looking at, like, I have somebody who, has a couple $1 million in properties, but she has an equal amount in debt. So when we look at in mortgage debt, no credit card debt, just mortgage debt. And so when we look at actually her net worth, she's flat. Yeah. Right? And so it's like, you can sell those properties, but you're not going to get much back if your debt is so high and you've leveraged all the equity in those properties.
Yep. Yeah, and people using the HELOCs, it's generally an interest only product. So people, and the payment they're not low right now. It's like 7.75, but generally people are only making the interest only payment on that. So you're not actually paying any of that principal down either. You're not getting any of that principal back. You're still paying your mortgage down, but that HELOC balance, a lot of people are just paying off that interest only payment. And so it is, again, one of those things. I think real estate's a great investment. It's what I do for a living.
Absolutely. But I have a couple properties myself. So yeah.
I think it is just a little oversold sometimes and oversimplified in terms of what people are doing and what the returns look like. And it's also super illiquid. And that's one thing for me, especially being as young as I am, like, I don't want to tie a bunch of money up until I'm 50 or 60 years old in case something happens or in case there's a life change. Yeah. So that's another reason why I like a tool such as a Roth, and because you can pull your initial investment out penalty free at any time. You only get dinged with a penalty if you start pulling out interest gains on it. So I like having that liquidity available, and I've structured my investments to be that way. So if something changes, I can pull liquidity out quickly, and I'm not going to start getting nailed with penalties, because those penalties are real.
And there's other tools that are available that are similar to that too, that are tax advantaged savings options. But I mean, there are so many tools available. Yeah. And, Roth is one of those. Whole life insurance is one of those. I mean, you have a lot of different ways that you can, different buckets, as I said before, that you can place your money. But knowing what your goals are, you got to start with that.
So, and you mentioned before, you kind of take a 30,000-foot view of people's businesses. And so are you helping people with actual business planning then on the financial side? Like, you should be setting up a business, like have a separate business bank account. Because I know as a musician, like, I never had a separate business bank account. It was all in and out of the same place.
On the financial side, yes. Like, I give them that advice. With some of the legal pieces, I do refer them to an attorney that specializes in that space. Like when it comes to setting up their LLC or their people always want to know, like, which of these do I need, and it depends, right? It depends on the structure of what you want, short term and long term. So not everybody needs an S corp, or there's various ways to structure. So I leave the that kind of conversation to the CPAs and the lawyers. That's their specialty.
Yeah.
But when it comes to actually cash flow planning, making sure that they're setting up the right kinds of bank accounts and things like that, I definitely have that conversation with them. I have sat with a young entrepreneur who's just getting started and helped her get her business ID, with the state. And those are things like, you just don't know where to go to get that kind of information. So, in order to open up a business bank account, you need to have that number and TIN number. So, help them sit and do that. And that's just part of the process. It's just kind of walking with them through the things that they don't know. And then helping them allocate, how they pay themselves, how much they pay themselves, and figuring out that. And so that comes through determining how much money they need. So we'll do a cash flow analysis. How much does it cost to live your life, right? What are your fixed expenses? Your rent or mortgage is going to be the same every month. So let's make sure we have enough money set aside for that. What are your debt payments, car payment, whatever? Let's make sure we have enough money set aside for that. Whatever hobbies, do they come to the cigar bar? And, if that's important to them, I'm not the kind of financial advisor that says you can't have a good cup of coffee or a cigar if you want one.
Yeah.
I'm the financial advisor that says, if you're going to come in and get a cigar once or twice a week, make sure you put in your budget, right? Make sure you have it in your cash flow plan.
I have good friends that give you cigars.
Yeah. Or have good friends that give you cigars. That is the preferred method, but somebody's got to pay for them. So just making sure that, you can, the things that are important to you, you allocate resources for that. And knowing whether that's coming out of their personal expense or their business expense, and how to keep those separate is part of that conversation as well.
Yeah. I know for me, I just grew up in a place of scarcity mindset. And so that was always, especially now as I'm making more money in my life than when I was playing music full time. Like I have that shocker. But I have that like extreme scarcity mindset from still being on the road and then just growing up the way that I grew up. And it's nice to hear that you take a look and it's like, because so many people, again, online, or if you're listening to Ramsey, it's like, you can't have a $5 cup of coffee, or you can't go and do this thing. And it's like, well, that's not necessarily true. You just need to plan for it.
Just plan for it.
Yeah.
Scarcity, like if you break that word down, it's scarcity.
Ooh.
It's like, I have a scarcity. Grew up in Scar City.
Yeah.
That's
the songwriter in you.
Listen, you better keep that for your trademark.
Great ideas are stolen.
You're giving it away.
That's my.
You're giving it away. But actually, I'm glad that you said that, because as you were talking, what I was thinking about was, any conversation around money, there are so many emotions tied to it. It's not just the dollars and the cents, right? Somebody can hand me all of their investment statements and their bank account statements and their credit card statements, and I can look at it and I can get a pretty good idea of how much they save, how much they spend, how much they blow, right? Whatever. But their relationship with money is actually what informs the conversation more than anything else.
Their goal, and you say their goal, it depends on when you said depends what their goals are, and I'm like, why isn't everybody's goal to get all the money in the world?
Because it's not.
But maybe like, how much money do I need to absolutely control my family? Make them do what I want.
Money. That's a different.
I grew up in Naples, Florida. And that's what happens.
Yeah.
Unless you're the person that made that money, then there's all the kids who are afraid. To spend whatever. They're getting the bad graces. And I met plenty of people in Nashville there too. They spend their whole life just pretending like they like their father or whatever. Just so they don't get cut out of whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
They don't even know what they're going to get. Maybe.
Yeah.
Surprise.
Well, but there are so many emotions that are tied to money. Right. Fear is a big one. Pride, of course.
Love. Right.
Love could be tied to it. People, especially people that are very giving. Yeah. Often they tie their money to feelings of love. Shame. There's so much shame when it comes to money. And so all of these emotions, impact how they spend their money, and not necessarily even how they spend it, but how they feel about how to spend it. And so, for example, I talk, the cup of coffee. I have had clients come and talk to me like, oh, I know I spend too much money on coffee, but they do it every day. Mm-hmm. It's like, if you're going to spend, $12 on coffee every day, you love it. It gives you some kind of joy. Like, don't feel guilty, right, about getting joy, right? Mm-hmm. So let's make sure that you don't feel guilty, and be shamed for doing things that you enjoy. Right?
I think so many people need your help.
Thank you.
You know what I mean? Like, if people watch this in the real estate world, they really do need help with their money. Like, I would have needed, a lot of help. I have in my life. But, because I don't know about everybody else, but, like, it's the deal that I love.
Yeah.
The money is whatever. It's almost secondary to
it's getting the deal done.
It's getting the deal is... That's where I get all the joy. That's where I get the money is the after product.
Yeah.
But that's if I would have had somebody to help me with the after product, I would have been in a much better position, especially over time.
Yeah.
You can't see. It's hard to imagine 10 years and what that can do when you're 30, when you're 40. But I promise you, kids, like, if you are in your 20s or 30s making big money in real estate, I mean, if you do the right things with that money, you will have a lot of money.
Yeah.
And then,
20 years
absolutely.
Yeah. And then you get to the point which you can make your own decision about how you spend your time and live your life. If you do these things wisely, especially if you start making a lot of money, and, and that's at the end of the day, I think what the goal is to enjoy this life
financial
that we're
independence.
living. Yeah.
Professional help.
Everybody
knows they need professional help for a lot of things, but for money, some people don't ever understand that. It's so important.
And I think a lot of people that are the creative entrepreneurs, including realtors, in that space, because people love to do real estate. Mm-hmm. I think the reason that they risk everything to start their own business and become a musician or become as independent business owner is because they love what they do. And a lot of times I talk to young people in their 20s and 30s, and I'm like, what does retirement look like to you? Oh, I'm never going to retire. And it's like, yeah, you can say that when you're 20 and 30, but there's a difference between being 90 years old, and if you're a musician, there's a 90-year-old guitar player that's sitting up there somewhere that should not be playing music anymore, but has to because they don't have enough money set aside.
I think I got two stories on that, kind of what you just said of never wanting to retire or not play music. I was that person pre-pandemic. And I mean, I remember we ended 2019. We were on the Miranda Lambert tour, opening some dates with her. And my whole thought was, I'm going to die on a tour bus. And fast forward now, 5 years, I'm not playing as much. I still play. I still love to play. And I am in the mortgage lending business. And it's like, I am a prime example of how quickly those things can shift.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people hit places, especially as you get into your 30s and 40s, and you realize how much of a hustle music is and how much money you're not making playing music, or it's like, man, I need to do something different.
Yeah.
And being prepared for that. And then the other one, what you just mentioned about people who just are doing it because they have to and they have no other choice. A really good documentary to watch is one on Levon Helm, Ain't In It For My Health. And now you had some exterior things of getting screwed out of money, but that guy towards the end was playing shows not because he wanted to be playing shows, but because he had to continue to play shows to make money, and that's never the place that you want to be. And he was playing up until basically the day he died, when he probably just wanted to be at home. And it was fairly evident in that documentary when they're talking to him, and it starts great. It's talking about his time in the band, and as it goes on, you can see just like he's bitter and he's jaded about the thing, and he's doing it not because he wants to, but because he has to. And that's what I think financial independence and making plans early because you can't get time back helps you not end up in that position later in life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So,
thanks for sharing that story.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it happens. So, because it can happen on a whim. I mean, it was slow for me, but it was kind of stewing before the pandemic. And I think the pandemic for a lot of people put some things into perspective about what it is we're doing. I know it did for me in terms of, do I really want to be doing this forever? And if I get married and have kids, do I want to be on a tour bus and sacrificing all the time that goes into
missing
that?
Birthday parties, missing
everything.
Derek, early years missed a lot of the kids' birthdays and
birthdays,
on the road holidays,
weddings,
and
anniversaries, holiday. I've missed it all.
We got married actually Memorial Day weekend because I thought we'll always have a 3-day weekend to celebrate our anniversary. Never is he available on right? Yeah. So it's like that's that because he's a musician and it's a 3-day weekend. What's a musician doing on a 3-day weekend? Playing a festival somewhere, right?
Especially that Sunday night because they can, they know all the people are going to be there because they don't got to be up for work on Monday morning. And it's like the older you get and the more life things that come on, that's when I realized I was like, this just doesn't make sense. And it's especially not going to make sense if I have kids. And now that's just me. That's not everybody. There's some guys out there who they're lifers, like for sure.
But even those people that are lifers, like what happens if you don't want to anymore, but what if you can't?
You can't. Yep.
A broken hand, cancer, right? I mean, there's health issues that will impact, and you can't. There's nothing you can do. And you can't go on the road if you're, it's hard. Well, I shouldn't say you can't. It's much harder to go on the road if you're getting cancer treatment, than, and
being a healthy young 30-year-old. It's two different things.
Very different.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I think this is a good spot to wrap. I think we hit everything. Is there any last thoughts that you have that you want to add on?
I don't think so. It's a great conversation.
Yeah.
Thanks.
What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
So I don't mind dropping my cell phone number here. 615-987-7620. You can text me or give me a call at that number. And my email is just my name, mariah.phillips@nm.com. Email me there. Website, you can find me on the website too. So
awesome. Well, thank you, Mariah, for taking the time to be here. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks so much for inviting me.
Thanks.